Countries trade with each other. They sell things and buy things. This is trade. Trade is important for countries and for people. Two very big countries are the United States and China. These two countries trade a lot. They buy and sell many goods. Goods are things like cars, clothes, and machines. The trade between the United States and China is very large. It is one of the biggest in the world. But sometimes trade is not easy. There can be problems. The United States and China had problems with their trade. These problems became difficult. One problem was about how much trade each country did. The United States bought much more from China than China bought from the United States. This difference was very big. The United States government said this was a problem. Another problem was about trade rules. The United States government said China's trade rules were not fair. They said it was hard for American companies to sell their goods in China. Because of these problems, the United States government put extra taxes on goods from China. These extra taxes are called tariffs. Tariffs make goods more expensive. For example, if a phone from China had a tariff, it would cost more in the United States. The United States put tariffs on many goods from China. China did not like the tariffs from the United States, so China also put tariffs on goods from the United States. This situation became a trade disagreement. It became difficult for businesses in both countries. It was harder for companies to buy and sell things. The tariffs made trade slow and expensive. People in both countries felt the effects of this difficult trade situation. The problems got bigger and bigger. The trade situation was not good. Because the problems were serious, important leaders from the United States and China decided to meet. They met to talk about the problems. They wanted to find a way to fix the trade issues. They wanted to stop the tariffs and make trade easier again. Leaders and other important people from both governments came to the meeting. They talked for some time. They discussed the reasons for the problems. They tried to understand each other. After the meeting, the United States and China made an important agreement. This agreement was a step to make the trade situation better. The agreement was about the tariffs and how to move forward. It was a way to pause the trade difficulties and allow more talks. This report is about that important agreement. It will explain what the agreement says. It will also explain why the trade problems started between the two countries. It will talk more about the tariffs and how they made trade difficult. Understanding this agreement is important. It affects many businesses and people in the United States, in China, and in other countries too. The agreement shows that even with big problems, countries can talk and try to find solutions. It was an important moment for the trade relationship between these two big countries. The chapters after this one will give more details. They will explain the problems before the meeting, what happened at the meeting, what was agreed, and what might happen next. This first chapter gives a general idea of the situation and what the report is about. 2. Problems before. Before the important meeting, trade between the United States and China was not in a good state. There were many problems that made trade difficult. One of the biggest problems was the trade deficit. This means that the United States bought a lot more goods from China than China bought from the United States. It was a very large difference in how much money went in and out of each country through trade. The government in the United States said that this trade deficit had become too big over the past few years. They felt it was a major problem for the American economy. It created a situation where the balance of trade was heavily on China's side. This imbalance was seen as unhealthy and needing a fix. The U.S. government described this large and growing deficit as a serious issue, almost like a national emergency for their economy. Another big problem from the view of the United States was that China's trade rules were not fair. The U.S. government said that China had rules and practices that made it very hard for American companies to sell their goods and services in China. They felt that American companies did not have the same opportunities as Chinese companies. This lack of equal rules was called unfair trade or non-reciprocal trade. It meant the playing field was not level for American businesses trying to sell in China. These trade problems had real effects on people and businesses in the United States. American companies found it difficult to compete with Chinese companies under these conditions. Because of the trade deficit and the unfair rules, some factories in the United States closed. Production moved to other countries, and many American workers lost their jobs. The U.S. government wanted to stop this and bring manufacturing back home. They believed that the large deficit and unfair rules were hurting the American economy and costing jobs. The United States government felt strongly that these problems needed to be fixed. They wanted trade to be more balanced, with China buying more American goods. They also wanted China to change its trade rules to be more fair and open for American businesses. They believed that previous ways of dealing with these issues had not worked well, and that a new approach was needed. So before the meeting, these big problems, the large trade deficit and the unfair trade rules, were the main reasons for the tensions and difficulties in trade between the two countries. They were the key issues that needed to be discussed and solved to make trade better and more equal. 3. A meeting happens. Leaders from the United States and China agreed that a meeting was necessary. They needed to discuss the serious problems with trade. This important meeting happened in the country of Switzerland. The specific location was the city of Geneva. The government of Switzerland provided great help to organize and support the meeting. They made sure the place for the talks was suitable. Many officials from both the United States and China traveled to Geneva. These were the people responsible for handling trade issues. The U.S. group met with the Chinese group. It was important for the leaders to meet face-to-face. Some had only talked using video calls before. The personal interactions were good. They showed respect for each other. The place where the meeting happened was special. It was not a typical office building. Some of the important discussions took place outside. They sat under a large tree on a patio. This setting was described as very helpful for the talks. It was different from a cold, formal hotel meeting room. This atmosphere helped the people from the U.S. and China build better personal connections. Building trust helped them talk more openly about the difficult issues. The main purpose of the meeting was to find solutions for the trade problems. The biggest issue was the high tariffs. Tariffs are extra taxes on goods bought from another country. Both countries had put high tariffs on many products from the other side. This had made trade very hard and expensive. The officials from both sides wanted to find a way to fix these issues. They hoped to stop the fight that had started because of the tariffs. The talks were described as productive and positive. It was not always easy to find agreement because both countries had their own goals, but they also realized they had things they both wanted. Neither side wanted to stop trading completely. Getting to a point where they could talk honestly and with trust was the most challenging part. However, once they reached this point, they were able to make agreements quickly, in just a few days. The meeting successfully created a way for the US and China to continue talking. This was a very important result. It was a big step towards solving the problems and stopping the tariff fight. 4. What they agreed. At the meeting in Switzerland, the United States and China made an agreement. It was a very important agreement for trade. The place where they met helped them talk well. The atmosphere was good for discussions. They agreed to stop putting more tariffs on things for 90 days. This means no new tariffs will start during this time. This is like a stop time for the tariff increases. Both countries promise to use this time to talk more. They are committed to these talks. Both countries also agreed to make some tariffs lower. These were the special tariffs they put on each other recently. These tariffs were very high before the meeting. They were put on many goods from both countries. Both sides made these special tariffs much lower. They went down to 10%. This was a big change. Before, these tariffs were over 100% on some goods. Lowering them to 10% was a big step for both sides. China also said they would take away other rules they had for things from the United States. These were rules that made trade very difficult. They were like other ways to stop U.S. trade. China agreed to remove these limits to help trade flow better. Other tariffs the United States had before did not change. These were tariffs that were in place for a longer time. Some tariffs on specific types of goods also stayed the same. The agreement was mostly about the recent, high tariffs they put on each other. This agreement gives the United States and China time to talk more. They want to find solutions that will work for a long time. During the 90 days, officials will meet and discuss important topics about trade. They want to make trade more fair for both sides. They also made a way to keep talking in the future. This helps them avoid new problems and work together. The talks showed that both sides have respect for each other. The agreement is a chance to build trust again. The leaders from both sides felt this was a good step. It shows they want to find solutions. The 90-day pause gives them a chance to work hard on the next steps to improve trade between the two countries. 5. Why tariffs started. The United States government started to put new taxes on goods that came into the country from China. These special taxes are called tariffs. This action happened before the recent important meeting between the US and China. The US government had clear reasons for starting these tariffs. One main reason was the very large difference in trade between the two countries. The United States bought much more in goods from China than China bought from the United States. This difference is known as the trade deficit. The US government believed this deficit had grown too large over several years and was hurting the US economy in significant ways. Another key reason the US government gave was that trade was not fair. They said that trade between the US and other countries, especially China, was not balanced. The U.S. felt that its own markets were very open for goods from other nations, allowing many imports. However, they believed that other countries had many rules and barriers, like their own tariffs and other limits, that made it difficult for goods made in the United States to be sold there. This was seen as non-reciprocal trade, meaning the openness was not equal on both sides. The U.S. government wanted to change this situation and create a healthier trade relationship. They wanted other countries to lower their trade barriers and make trade more equal and balanced. President Trump introduced a plan for trade called the America First Trade Policy. This policy was strongly focused on making trade agreements and relationships that would benefit the United States first and foremost. Tariffs were a major part of this America First plan. The U.S. used tariffs as a strong tool to try and push other countries to change their trade practices and open their markets more to U.S. goods. For example, the U.S. put a reciprocal tariff on goods from China. This was a new tax set at a notable percentage, like 34% at one point, on many Chinese products. The U.S. government felt that trying to fix trade problems only through talking and traditional international agreements had not worked well enough over many years. They believed that previous approaches had not solved the problem of the growing trade deficit or the unfair trade practices. They saw that making things in the U.S. was becoming harder as companies moved their factories to other places overseas. This loss of manufacturing and jobs in the United States was believed to be partly a result of the imbalanced and unfair trade situation. So the decision was made to use tariffs as a different and stronger method. The U.S. government stated that the large trade deficit was a serious issue for the country's economic health and needed direct, firm action. By putting tariffs on goods from China, the U.S. aimed to create pressure and gain a better position in trade talks. The ultimate goal was to make trade more balanced and fair from the perspective of the United States, hoping to bring back manufacturing jobs and reduce the trade deficit. This is why the tariffs began, setting the stage for the trade problems that required the recent meeting to find solutions. 6. How things got worse. The United States started putting new tariffs on goods from China. This happened before the leaders met. After the U.S. put these new tariffs, China did something too. China put its own tariffs on goods from the United States. This was a reaction to the U.S. action. At that time, China was the only big country that decided to put tariffs back on the U.S. like this. Other big countries did not do this. They wanted to talk first, but the trade problems did not stop. They got worse. The United States put even more tariffs on goods from China. Then China put even more tariffs on goods from the United States. It was like a fight with tariffs. Each side kept adding more tariffs. The tariffs became very high for goods going between the two countries. When tariffs are very high, it makes goods much more expensive. This makes it hard for companies to buy and sell things. China also used other ways to make trade difficult for the U.S. These were not just tariffs. They used other rules or actions that stopped U.S. goods from coming into China easily. It was like putting up more walls for trade. In some cases, these actions were almost like a ban on certain goods from the U.S. This meant that some U.S. products could not be sold in China at all, or it was very, very difficult. So, the trade situation became much worse. The high tariffs and the other difficulties made trade between the United States and China very slow and hard. It was not good for companies or for the people who bought goods. It was like the trade fight kept getting bigger and bigger. This difficult time showed how serious the trade problems were before the meeting happened. 7. More important topics. The United States and China talked about many things. Their discussions were not only about tariffs and how much things cost to buy from each other. They also talked about other important topics for their countries. One big topic was about making important goods. The United States looked at different industries. These are businesses that make things. The U.S. saw that sometimes it was hard to get important goods. This happened with things like medicine and computer parts. The U.S. wants to make sure it can always get these things. So, the U.S. government wants American companies to make more of these important goods inside the United States. They also want to get these goods from countries that are good friends with the U.S. This helps the U.S. to be more independent and have reliable supplies. Another important topic was about the future of their trade relationship. Sometimes people talk about decoupling. This is a word that means the two countries stop almost all trade with each other. It means their economies would become very separate. This is a very big change. During their talks, both the United States and China said something important about decoupling. They agreed that they do not want this to happen. Neither country wants to stop all trade with the other. They want trade to continue. They know that trade is important for both countries. Even though they had problems and put tariffs on each other's goods, they still want to trade. They want to find a way for trade to work better for both sides. But stopping trade completely is not something either country wants to do. This was a clear point they agreed on. It showed that they still see value in having trade between their two large economies. These talks were important for discussing these points beyond just the tariffs. 8. Looking to the future. The United States and China now have a period of 90 days. This time is for more talks. They want to find ways to fix trade problems for a long time. Officials from both countries said they are very committed to these negotiations. The U.S. wants trade to be more equal. Today, the U.S. buys much more from China. The U.S. wants China to buy more goods from the United States. This would help make trade more balanced. Officials think they might agree on special deals for China to buy U.S. products. They also want to bring back some types of manufacturing to the U.S. The people who met said they have a plan and a process. They also have a way to keep talking. They created a mechanism for continued discussions. This mechanism is new and important. It should help them talk well and avoid problems like before when tariffs got very high. They hope the talks in the next 90 days will be very good. They want to stop the trade fight getting bigger again. This work on trade is part of a bigger plan for the U.S. economy. The U.S. president has a plan with 3 main parts. The first part is about trade, like the agreement made. This trade process is happening now. The second part is about taxes. The government believes this is going well. The third part is about making fewer rules for businesses. The government is working on all 3 parts. They believe these steps will help the U.S. economy. The goal is to have trade that is fair for both countries. They do not want to stop trading completely. They want to rebalance trade. Officials feel positive about the talks ahead. They have a good way to talk now. This should help them find solutions for the future of trade between the two countries. They believe this mechanism will help avoid the unfortunate problems seen before.